evening. The time is now 5:00 p.m. on November 21st, 2022. It's time for public safety committee meeting to order. Please note the record. Committee members, have you reviewed the agenda? Any questions?
Done. So moved. I'll second.
It's time to go for the public comment. At this point, I do not see any members of the public in attendance at all, nor do I see any online. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. These are from October 17th, 2022. Is there any questions or concerns about the agenda?
Well, we need feedback. Well, that's true, but from the computer or something. I'll try not to imagine. What did you probably need?
I was just going to ask the same question.
Is that better? Oh, I've improved everything. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
So going back to the minutes.
I never have anything to say about that. I can never figure out. You guys figure out things that are wrong with the minutes all the time, and I'm just in awe.
No changes.
Moving forward, there are two agenda bills today. The first is agenda bill 22-076. This is the backing up budget. Use the final budget. I have not received any correspondence from additional council members regarding the procedure with respect to budget at this time. Board members, do you have questions or additional items that you're going to discuss?
I feel. No. Budget.
Mayor, is there any additional information from the administration? In that case, the agenda will move back to the council next week, and there's nothing further that we need to do on it at this point. The second agenda bill.
Always say something. Always. Right. So thank you, council. We are working through the updates from last Tuesday. At this point, we will hopefully have an updated budget document out tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then Wednesday. We'll have the weekend to kind of look over it for the most part, and hopefully return with any questions you may have. We're hoping to adopt it on the 28th, but there may be further additional questions, and as a consequence, this may extend until about the 12th or so. We're in a date for adoption, but anyway, thank you. Feel free to send in your comments by writing or questions if you have any, and we'll be more than happy to try to address them by the 28th. So thank you for your patience and diligence so far, and looking forward to hopefully wrapping this up by the end of the year.
You guys have been working really hard. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So moving back towards agenda bill 22-159, this is amending section 10.08.010 on the municipal code, parking for continuous period longer than 24 hours. This is a staff presentation.
Thank you, council members, mayor, city council, city administrator. Thank you guys for having me today. This is to speak about the issues that have arisen from the parking on Frontier Avenue. If you're not familiar with that, it's the road that runs into the Panorama Apartments up on the ridge. And I'm going to, before I go into the history of this, I'm going to let you guys have a brief summary that we've created so you can follow along. Okay, so in June of 2021, we started getting a high amount of parking complaints coming on from Frontier Avenue that we were responding to. And we ended up having Officer Mandry assigned as kind of our parking liaison for that neighborhood to address these problems. She has done countless hours of education for the people that live in the neighborhood and also the people that are parking their cars there that do not live in the neighborhood. This boils down to having an apartment complex that has a set amount of parking spots for their tenants. The people that we've contacted that are parking on Frontier Avenue that are associated with Panorama Apartments, for the most part, they are unknowns to the apartment complex. They're actually living there, not on the lease. So each unit would probably have 1 or 2 parking spots available to them on the property. When they have extra family members or friends coming over, there is no parking for them. So they move out into the neighborhoods. That wouldn't be totally a problem until they start leaving their cars there. And now it's become like a long-term parking along the roadways in front of the people's houses on Frontier. So we have done a lot of education with the management at Panorama Apartments, trying to get the word out to their tenants. One of the things that we found was an issue with enforcement under our current ordinance, the ordinance number 1271. It actually says that there's a 24-hour limit for parking on a city right-of-way. And the spirit of the law is that if we come around and chalk your tire, if there's a complaint that the car is parked there for more than 24 hours, we will respond and we'll chalk the tire to make sure that it moves within 24 hours from us getting there. And what we're finding is the tire is moved just a little bit, and they've moved maybe a foot. One was actually broken down and wouldn't start, so the guy pushed it a little bit just to say that he moved it. In those cases, it leaves us very little room for enforcement of the law, and we're missing the spirit of that actual ordinance. So what we've done with this ordinance is try to add some language that says a vehicle shall be deemed to be parked in violation of this section unless the vehicle is moved to a different block every 24 hours. For purposes, this section of block is defined as a stretch of roadway between the 2 closest public street intersections on either end of the stretch. Where the roadway ends, a block is defined as the stretch of roadway between the end of the roadway and the closest public street intersection. This would give our officers the ability to actually enforce the spirit of the ordinance. As of right now, a lot of times we're not able to help the people that are enduring the problem of limited parking in front of their house, or having cars that are parked there with no license plates. We've actually had documented cases of cars being up on blocks and having major transmissions jobs done on the streets. We do a lot of talking and trying to educate and trying to work with the public. We don't go through there chalking tires without a complaint. We don't go looking for parking problems, but when we do get the 911 calls, we do respond. I just looked up this afternoon, since January 1, we've had 31 instances in a 2-block stretch of Frontier where they're calling 911 for us to come out and assist them with their problems. But that doesn't even count the times that Officer Mandry goes up there in the afternoon and will see cars that she hasn't noticed there before, run the license plates, and they're from out of town. They do not live in that neighborhood, so she will chalk the tires and she'll keep an eye on it. And then she makes every effort to make contact with them by phone, the registered owners, to say, look, you have to move this or it's going to be towed. We've been working over the last couple of months with the city administrator and coming up with some ideas and thinking outside of the box on how to handle this issue. This one was the easiest route to give the police department a little bit of teeth when they respond to this. We can enforce this with an infraction. We can ultimately, if the vehicle is left there for an extreme period of time after being marked, it can be towed. That's not our goal. We don't really enjoy taking people's cars away from them. So we would continue to work with the registered owners to try to get them to move it. There's been times where Officer Landry has gone out of her way to help with resources for people that can't get their car started, and will assist them in having it, moved from the area to get fixed. So this was the first step. We were also in the vein of thinking outside of the box for problems and for solving this. We've been in discussions to try to come up with a pilot program for that area on Frontier, to start a residents-only parking on the street. And we have been in contact with other cities nearby that have done this, and they have had success with these programs, to where the residents at the house would be issued, and this is all concept right now. We haven't even written anything down. This is what we've been talking about. The residents of the house would, on Frontier, would be given stickers for their windows, and they can get unlimited as long as they come to either wherever the stickers would be housed, either the police department or the city. And if they say, look, my son's coming home from college and we'll be here for a couple months, can we get another sticker? Of course you can. At that point, they are registered to that address, and the people that park there overflow from Panorama Apartments that are in from Federal Way or Kent or anywhere else in the county. They would not be able to park there. That's something that we've been talking about. We have not taken any action or written anything down, but I wanted to take this opportunity, since we're talking about my favorite topic of parking, to bring that up to you. So just to maybe get your opinions on it. I don't know how the council would react to something like that. If it's something that you would be interested in learning more, we can definitely come up with something in writing to see how it would look, how the program would be. We also don't want to have this be a new citywide, because everybody's going to want it for their neighborhoods. We would have to control it to where it's a pilot program to see how it works. And we're only going to do it for this stretch of 2 or 3 blocks of Frontier, see how it works. There's also going to be other problems that come up with that, where the streets to the north and the south and the east and the west of Frontier might see an increase in those cars as well. But hopefully with the efforts of Officer Andrew she does hard work trying to work with the complex management to try to get the word out that they can't do that, they can't park there. It has gotten better over the last couple of months. It has slowed down, and I think that is from the efforts of Officer Andrew. Without that, the 911 calls would be double, I believe. So as it sits right now, I'm asking for you to consider the passage of this Agenda Bill 22-159, and would be interested to hear any questions or any concerns that you have about this.
So I understand the scenario, and you can almost categorize it as being a restrained parking zone neighborhood, because there's other neighborhoods you can go down and there's plenty of parking. It just happens to be kind of unique to this position, this situation. It's 191 units, and I believe they are designated for 191 parking stalls, maybe plus a few more. But when you have 5-bedroom apartments and there are multiple drivers, it becomes problematic for the neighbors. My position is, I wouldn't want to see it citywide, and I wouldn't want to have the police have to respond to everybody that's upset with the neighbor that's parking in front when, it's not the point of it. So could we get a designation on a pilot program that would be a constrained parking zone neighborhood or something like that.
I'm sure we can.
I would be amenable to that.
I think I would also be more in favor of going forward with that program than just, going forward with ordinance that stands. There's a number of
when I was reading it, I did read it as citywide, and I know that my household would be in violation of this all the time. I have 6 drivers in my house, and basically the way that I read it was that we would all have to drive all of our cars every day and park somewhere else every other day. And I think that would just, I think it'd lead to a whole bunch of unintended consequences, you know, on the next block where people are saying, well, why are you parking over here again? You know, and this is my house, you know.
I can speak to how we actually would use this ordinance. Is that this is not a proactive ordinance. My officers are not going out and saying, you know what, I have nothing to do for the next hour. I'm going to tune up the neighborhood for parking violations. We just don't do that. We respond to calls for service for parking and complaints. And for the most part, that's when our interaction with the registered owner of that vehicle would start. If it's your car registered to your family or you at that address, and we get a complaint about you, we would make contact with you and say, hey, there's a complaint about this car, you know, what's the situation? We would use discretion on anybody under that circumstances. That's not something that would be letter of the law enforced. The spirit of this is to help the extremely frustrated neighborhood of Frontier Avenue, to the point where one of them has put up a sign in the front yard that looks like an official no parking sign, but it's his own sign. And you can see just by that action, the level of frustration with them.
You know, I was in this room when Panorama was being debated, and it was one of the things that we talked about. We said Frontier is going to be devastated by being the only point of ingress and egress in that place. It's going to be, and now we're dealing with exactly that. But I think that my concern is, you know, that an ordinance like this makes it so that any neighbor who has a beef with his neighbor can use this as a way to harass them with the police, and you don't have time for that. You know,
to that, I wouldn't be opposed to adding further language in this that would be like you said, a pilot for this actual ordinance. If that's a concern, by all means, we would be willing to go down that road and see how it works with Frontier first.
well, you know, if it were me, I mean, I know people who live on the next street over, and, you know, I would like to see, I would much rather have this problem dealt with than spreading it to the whole city. And if you did do a pilot program, I would hope that it wouldn't just include Frontier, but the adjoining streets. Because if it does just include Frontier, then we know exactly what's going to happen.
Yes, we do.
So.
city administrator.
Yeah, let me just be really clear about this. The 24-hour parking limit exists today.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to park your car longer than 24 hours without moving. Having said that, you're absolutely right. There's several neighborhoods where I think people have multiple drivers to house and they have multiple cars parked for longer than 24 hours in front of their own house. You know, our intent with this ordinance is really to give the police an additional tool in their toolbox by, as Captain said, to kind of define what is the spirit of the ordinance. The spirit of the ordinance isn't to, you know, move your car a foot after, you know, your neighbors have complained that it's been sitting there up on blocks for, you know, 2 weeks. So it really gives them an additional tool in their toolbox. As far as the, you know, call it experiment, an opportunity to, try something new. If we do that in just the one neighborhood, what we would be doing is having the stickers that allow people to say, this is, you can only park on the street in this neighborhood if you have one of these stickers on your car. And, we're borrowing this from another community that was using it specifically to address a park and ride. They had a park and ride that was filling up by 6 a.m. And so by 7 a.m., all of the streets around the park and ride were full of cars of people trying to get on the bus. So it was an attempt to say that, the park and ride is for transit, the streets are for the people who live there. And so it's an imperfect comparison. But that's why we're looking at it as an experiment and, something short-term, that we would try. The two obvious, responses we could get is from many other neighborhoods around it saying, me too. And also the fact that, as was pointed out earlier, there's significantly more cars owned by people who live in Panorama than are parking places in Panorama. So if you're simply going to push it to a further neighborhood, to the point that was made of, let's not just do this on Frontier, let's define a zone. And, if we're going to do the experiment, let's do it for that zone and see if that helps.
I do like the idea as well of having it be tied to the residents that are in Panorama, because, if they decide that they're one parking spot, they want a lot of reserve one parking, and they end up parking on the street. And so then you're going to end up having better relations with the neighbors that live there if it's the people that are actually living there and have more vested interest in the neighborhood as well. So I do like that idea.
Yeah, the only other thing is, if you have a guest, typically the guest is not going to be parking overnight that often where it becomes an issue. And then all the other cars would be marked with the zone sticker on their car, so that's pretty obvious. It's just, we're trying to address the habitual abusers of the system, people that don't necessarily live here as residents. So I think that's a reasonable approach.
So I think if there was a pilot program, you could have a 3-hour time limit for parking without a permit. I used to live in LA, and there are all kinds of areas where you can park here for 2 hours between the hours of X and Y, and then you got to move your car. I think that would also deal with it as well, and it would make it so that people who live in the area could still have people come over and visit, without them having to worry about getting a ticket.
So it sounds like, based on the conversation, that people are interested in going forward with a pilot program. So what would be a reasonable amount of time just to go back on that?
Well, what I would suggest then is that we take a two-step approach. That if you're in support of the ordinance as written, in other words, just really kind of defining better as written in the current code, we can take that forward to the city council. And then probably after the first of the year, because we're going to need to sit down with the city attorney and actually draft up some language, we could bring back to the committee, a more fleshed out proposal for a zone park. And we can address some of the issues you've raised here about give some options. We want to make it 3 hours, we want to make it 24 hours, and come back and have that discussion with the council. It's usually better to have a discussion when you've got something in writing in front of you. So give us some time to put something together and come back after the first of the year to the committee.
Hopefully, is going to go to council, which is just the ordinance, and then certainly not going to take the rest, or.
I still don't like the language on it just because I know I'm in violation of it all the time.
And I am too, so.
So I guess one of the other concerns I had, so if we're requiring them to move the vehicle to another block, are we just going to be pushing, is it really going to make that much of a difference for the folks that are on Frontier, or is it just going to be a different set of people parking on their street every 24 hours? and they're just gonna be swapping those blocks.
Yeah. This is an imperfect
Yeah.
response at best, and to a problem that without Panorama Apartments building a huge apartment complex isn't going to go away. But as you know, this has come from over almost a year and a half of frustration and complaints from that particular neighborhood. So, yeah, it will move the problem further out. But as long as we stay on top of, the education process and the warnings and trying to work with them to maybe find other long-term parking problems or parking solutions, I think that's the best that we can hope for. I mean, this is not going to get rid of the parking. It just gives us a more clearly defined language in the already existing ordinance to take action.
My other concern is, if you're enforcing this law, this ordinance on certain people and not on others, doesn't that expose you? Doesn't that expose the police department to accusations of unfairness or bias?
This was already a citywide ordinance that if we get complaints anywhere in the city, our response would be the same. We go and we find the vehicle. We try to make contact by phone or in person with the owner of the vehicle. We will shock the tires and give them 24 hours to have it moved. A lot of the times, we give additional time. If we make contact with them and they just can't, and they're showing a hardship, we will give them additional time. We will give them, we talked to the people that called and said, look, we're not going to tow this car tomorrow, and here's why. And they're usually satisfied with that as long as it's a problem that's getting addressed. So the new language on here wouldn't change our response throughout the city at all. We handle parking complaints the same everywhere. This would give us the ability to actually take some sort of enforcement action on the ones that have found the loophole in the language by just moving it, 6 inches or a foot.
So I understand the intent of clarifying language to the existing city ordinance. It sounds to me like what we need is a new section on authorizing a pilot program at the discretion of city administration, at the discretion in consultation with the police department and affected neighborhoods, almost separate from everything else, because it sounds like the outreach that you're doing is appropriate in a community-friendly manner, but what we have in this case needs to be addressed separately in a separate clause in the code. That is for a designated neighborhood surrounding Frontier Street.
And there are definitely two different options that we're discussing. The first is just the clarification of the existing 24-hour rule. The second would be, as we discussed, Mr. Sauerwein, that we've been talking about this in our group, but now it's time to actually go the distance and put language on paper and have it go through legal and have something for you guys to look at, in January to see what you are thinking about the pilot program for the stickers and the permits.
Can we table it until the next public safety meeting, give us a chance to, and your department as well, to work with the city administrator, city attorney, knowing the direction. I don't want to take a half-baked idea and I know it's a good one, to the city council because it's only me who pulled the party more
And I don't want to get towed.
before Christmas.
Come into your neighborhood tomorrow.
So am I hearing a motion?
Please.
Oh,
Sure. I brought a show and tell.
That's awesome.
I'm not familiar with the process on all of this, on how it works. I just wanted some I wanted to clarify with you guys or get some clarification. The two separate, like one's a temporary fix. The permit parking and that discussion is for long term. Right now, the temporary with the 24-hour is not for the person who lives there that has multiple vehicles, because clearly you're not just leaving a vehicle. I am dealing with people who, yes, they have multiple vehicles, and it's not leaving it there for the weekend. We're talking weeks on it. I'm giving them chances. I'm talking to these are people that have people living with them that are not on the lease, that aren't supposed to be there, and their vehicles don't run, and so they are just abandoning them, and so then they just leave it there. It's not for the people that live in the area or that live in the city. It's giving me the opportunity. I've now reached out to you and I've told you, we do have a city ordinance, and if you can move your vehicle, if you need some time, that's great. We'll give you some time. I'm not out here to impound all these vehicles and to take your vehicle away. It's for the people that say, it doesn't run, it's broke down, and I have nowhere to park. So you need to move it. So he pushes it. It's like he said, the spirit of the 24 hours. They're two separate things. Right now, this is just giving me a tool for the rare amount, because it's not all the time. I think we've done a really good job in this, working with the community. And there's a lot of people who are unfamiliar with. I didn't even know we have right now a city ordinance that says you have to move it every 24 hours. This is specific to the ones that said, okay, I moved it an inch. Now you're not working with me. I'm trying to work with you. The police department's trying to work with you. And I'm not saying you can't have multiple vehicles out parking. That's a whole other problem that we need to look into, how to fix all the multiple vehicles and the parking problems. The 24-hour is just to help give us the tool for the small amount of people that are taking advantage of it, that are purposely not moving their vehicle. And so this gives us a resource to say, hey, I'm giving you the chance, and then I come back. And again, chalking the tires is just for me to see if it's moved. And then I go back out if it hasn't moved. Then I put a sticker on it, and that gives them another 24 hours. Like, they are giving multiples. A citizen, like if you said you had multiple vehicles and you didn't move it for the weekend, you're not going to get a complaint. The complaints are, this vehicle hasn't moved for over a week. And if the neighbor was upset, that's why I'm on both sides. I also have to give the person a chance, as well. I realize the frustrations of the neighbors that are talking, or the homeowners that are frustrated with the parking problem. But I also, talk with, like the captain said, I do my due diligence. I do call. I do give them the opportunity. I do work with them. And there are people that, can't move it right now, or have a sick child. I mean, who can't get out of the house. One had COVID. One was in the hospital. That is not my intentions. And then I call the person who complained and said, hey, look, there's a situation, they need a little more time, and they're totally fine with that. The 24-hour, moving it a block, we already have the 24-hour, but giving it a distance to move are the people that try to take advantage of the spirit of the law. That's all that is.
You explained that so much better than he did.
No, I didn't.
Thank you for your comments. I do appreciate that. I do have concerns about changing the rules for a temporary solution to a problem. I do have concerns about changing the code for that. I also just do have some concerns about making a move in an entire block, and so as it's getting darker, as we're having stormy weather, I'm picturing, a little lady going out having to work the car every 24 hours. So I do still have some remaining concerns on that. We'll move forward to a more permanent solution. But I can certainly understand the frustrations both with the neighbors, and I can't imagine how it feels to be in your shoes having to work between the two, because that's a really difficult situation to be in. There's no doubt about that. Councilmembers, where do you want to go?
I'm the idea that, I'm not a cop, but I imagine that frustrations, when they multiply, can turn into bigger problems. So I understand the need for something. I'm leaning toward agreeing with the police officers about what needs to be done. With the caveat that I would really like to see this pilot program put in place. So my personal opinion is, that if they feel like this is the best way to handle it, they're the ones closest to the problem. So, and they promise not to tell my car. So, but if this agenda bill was passed, and with the understanding that we want to figure out this pilot program so that there can be a longer-term solution for the people living in the frontier area, I feel really comfortable with that.
We're still hungry.
All right. Well, I guess we have two options. We can either table it for now. We could go ahead and put it forward on council's agenda for next week and take it up about 7 months present. Councilor one.
Here's my other concern. We need to get through our budget. And I have this fear of putting one more thing on the plate until we get the budget squared away. I guess for me, if I would have greater comfort in coming back in January with a solid recommendation to the rest of the council. Unless I'm dissuaded otherwise, by the other two of you.
I just feel like it's a problem now. It's a problem now, and waiting another month and a half to come up with a temporary solution to a problem that we have right now seems like more opportunity for more problems. So what I'm hearing from the officers is that this is an actual real problem right now. So it would be nice to do something that could help them deal with that. I don't know how long it would take to put together a pilot program idea. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Well, like I said, I definitely would be after the first of the year. I think I'd be more comfortable saying we could probably bring it to your February meeting than your January meeting.
Just as a quick point of clarification, how many cars are we talking about that are the repeat offenders that are moving just a short distance?
I'm under the understanding that there's a small amount of offenders that would do that. Do you have any idea?
It is a small amount.
Small amount being 20 or 5 or somewhere in between.
That are constantly violating it. I mean, I'm going out there weekly. I'm not impounding it. I'm obviously and then I got to call the building and back and say, technically, we moved it. Then it's just a vicious circle. But it's not like we were talking about the same offenders. But I would say anywhere from 5 to 10.
Okay, so 5 to 10.
It's just how tires get slashed,
I'm just not convinced that requiring that they move it a block is going to solve the issue, right? I'm just worried that they're going to end up just moving it a little bit further and it's still not going to solve the problem.
Well, the parking isn't gonna solve the problem, the parking in front isn't gonna solve the problem itself. That's gonna be the parking permit for us to get a launch. This is the influence will give us where we're not impounding them. Right now, after 24 hours, I can't impound the car. I don't want to, it's the ones that aren't moving it. If he moved it, it's not solving the parking problem, but it's solving the parking, it's solving the fact that they did move it to give space.
Can we poll the audience?
I do think that we need to.
I think you already used that one. I think all you have left is your phone number.
Well, council members,
It's up to you.
I'll put it in a motion, whether it's to put it forward on council or to.
I'd move to take the council, move it forward. It's going to be a solution.
I will second the motion. David?
Aye.
This is word council.
Just as a practical matter, would you like to have it under your committee or on consent for the next council meeting? It's an ordinance, we've got to do 2 readings anyway. But for the first reading, we can put the first reading on consent or into the committee.
I don't think that's
on consent. I'm not comfortable putting on consent.
I'm not going against you.
And I can say,
Thank you very much.
all right, so now we're going to move on to discussion items. I believe we have a presentation, which is the redesigned city website.
Gail couldn't be here with me, but this was very much a team effort from both of us, so I'm just up for presenting. Alrighty, this has been going on since I started the end of last February. It was one of our top projects to complete. We, our contract with Civic Plus allows us to redesign every 5 years, so it was time. We started by going back, getting some feedback from people. We had departments give us feedback of what they thought might add to user experience with current website and improve usability, excuse me. So one of our goals was less clicks, more info. Help users find what they need, to decrease staff time answering emails. Where do I find this? So in the process of this, we launched a couple new pages, the How Do I page, which has all sorts of fun stuff to hopefully help them find what they were doing. And then we moved a tab called Visit Snoqualmie up to a top page. And then we decided we wanted more visuals and less text. So we kind of revamped what the center of the website looked for news and announcements was. So we kind of transitioned between these 2 photos so that when we moved to the new website, the transition for folks wouldn't be quite so dramatic. So we looked at our website analytics, wanting to know what people were coming to our website for. I'll let you guess, we did this with staff last week, what you think one of our top pages is besides the home page, if you could guess what you think it might be.
Parking enforcement?
Yeah. Police and fire were both up there, but our top page was Twin Peaks. And then 2 other visitor type pages that people were coming to and looking at a lot were recreation and outdoor activities and Snoqualmie. So that was one of the reasons that drove us to want to put Visit Snoqualmie in the top main tab, to not only be something for our residents to use, which we know they do. They go to the water service groups, they go to police, they go to fire, they go to the calendar. Those are all top pages too, but we were I'm kind of surprised to learn how many visitors and tourists were coming and accessing information from our city website. So that was one of the things we wanted to consider when moving to a new design too. So we went into researching other websites, looking for ones we liked. We identified examples of ones we liked, and we commissioned some new artwork for the homepage to kind of break up the boxiness that Civic Plus websites tend to have. IT assistant, they sent up the drone, plugged it into Google Earth, knew exactly where to launch it to get the photo we were looking for. And then we just went through the process of approving the mood board with the team at Civic Plus, and we got a final design that we really liked and feel pretty proud of, and then showed it to staff last week and came to the committee so that you guys had a chance to see it before it goes live on Sunday. So now, stop the share. So I'll show the right page this time. So, this is a full view of what the new website will be. That is where Brendan took the drone up. It's on a slider for this header. Sorry, but one of the main things that we looked for and put in here was these static tabs. You'll notice now as we scroll, the agendas and minutes. For all of you who often wonder where your agendas and minutes are, they will always be there for you. You'll always be able to find your meetings to watch. We revamped the contact us page to include all departments that are in different buildings with emergency numbers, hours, and then we have it linked directly to emergency alerts, which will include flood alerts, citywide notifications of emergency alerts that are on the website page which aren't being utilized as much as we'd like, and then the King County alert system. So if we scroll down, this is the line art we had commissioned. Kat is the artist's name. She also did down at the kiosk on the boardwalk, the trail map and things that are in there. She also did that for us. So that's quite a while, and to come up with the final design, we're fishing there for the mayor. She likes to fish. And then our community news will sit right here in the center. It's kind of really similar to what we transitioned the old website layout to, so that it would seem familiar to people. Currently, you'll be able to see the boxiness on the homepage now that has the community spotlights. That will run through here on a slider now. Still click and link. Got your meetings. It's set up so if there's 4 things on one day, it will show all 4 things. So sometimes when it does that, it can look a little off, but it just means we had a lot of meetings today. And then this is one of my favorite things. We were able to incorporate some of our social media video directly into the homepage. So now you'll be able to watch a city council meeting, look at whatever. Right now we have set up for Facebook, we could put Instagram in there if we wanted, and then this is on a slider here. We have a fire blotter, a more prominent place to show our blog modules that didn't have quite an easy way to show on the last website homepage. So the fire blotter's in there, and then I believe it's this week we're going to be relaunching the police blotter too. So there'll be 3 things that I will include here. And then just a quick peek at, I was just want to show you an interior page. So that's just to see the color scheme as it looks on the interior page. So yeah, December 9th, early in the morning. So our website will probably be inaccessible for about a total of 2 hours. And the plan is all the current content that's on there will just seamlessly move right over, and by 9 a.m. we'll be on a new platform. Thank you. We're excited. Hope you guys like it. We'll make the round, so some of you might see this twice because we have to come back for 1 meeting tomorrow to catch Councilmember Holloway.
Thank you. I know it's a tremendous amount of work.
It's fun work.
All of the front facing, and then there's all the back facing missionary.
Yeah, they're working on some of the document center organization at the back end. So that's another project for 2023, but we're getting there. Thank you.
All right, now moving forward, our next item is the fire training consortium.
So about a month ago, I presented to you a presentation on a consortium with the plan and vision of having Bothell, Kirkland, on the east side, Fall City, and potentially do Muldoon. It's all changed. The vehicle that we're using has changed. We are actually going to hit that same target though. So Kirkland and Bothell have decided to step back and wait a year before they actually join. So what has happened is Eastside, Fall City, Duval, and Snoqualmie are all going to join the South King County Fire Training Consortium, and then they'll establish the North Training Annex, the North Training Office. So the vehicle is different, but the goal of training together and doing all that other stuff is the same. The reason why I didn't bring forward an agenda bill is because 2 years ago, the council already approved that agenda bill to join the South King County Training Consortium. We withdrew from it in July. We didn't cancel the agreement, and the agreement is still good through the end of next year. So we've submitted a letter to the admin board to rejoin that consortium. The consortium has accepted our request. So on January 1st, we'll be training with the consortium either in the north or the south, but likely, again, with our neighboring partners, which is really what our ultimate goal was. As far as the cost to the city, one of the ways that the cost was reduced was by assigning our training officer to the consortium 0.3, what they call a 0.3 FTE or full-time equivalent, which is equivalent to 600 hours the city will owe back to the consortium. And the way we'll accomplish that is by assigning the training officer to the consortium when they have their multi-company operations drills. It'll all be scheduled through them. And 600 hours is about 0.28% of the time of our current training officer. So the remaining 3/4 of his time will be spent here in the fire station doing fire department work and managing the volunteer program. So although Kirkland and Block will have held off, we are going to be training with our neighbors, and we're going to be doing it under the South Carolina Training Consortium. Just wanted to provide you an update on that.
Yeah, I have a question. The withdrawal of Kirkland and Bothell, does that affect us negatively in any way, or?
No, not at all. The model that they were using for finances and how we can assign a training officer back to the academy, it doesn't affect us at all. We're all hopeful. All the partners in South King County and the north ones that have just joined them are hopeful that Kirkland and Bothell will join next year. There was some politics that played out, and there was also an agreement timing that for Bothell that originally they had to separate from their North Training Group, which is basically Shoreline Fire Department. They had to give it a 1-year notice, and they didn't do that. So by them doing that, they're just pumping the brakes on it. So, I mean, ultimately, this is a better outcome than what was originally proposed. The ultimate goal is to have, as I mentioned before, one training consortium, either in King County or everybody in King County except for Seattle. And this just removes one step. The original plan was to do that North Consortium and have the South Consortium and then eventually bring them together. Now we're just joining the South Consortium and hopefully it'll expand. Okay.
Okay, moving on to our last one of business with the annual CRS report.
Good evening. I was going to say afternoon, but days got up. I'm Dylan Gamble. I'm a planner in the Community Development Department. And I'm going to give a quick update on the CRS. I'm going to explain the program a little bit and then explain what the annual update is for. So the CRS program is the community rating system. It's related to how the city interacts with FEMA policy related to heavily flood impacted cities. And in our case, we have a lot of losses due to locations, proximity to the river, and some other flooding elements. So what we do with the city is we work through a program called CRS to reduce our insurance rates for our citizens who have to have insurance via the NFIP program, National Floodplain Insurance. It's a requirement if you have a mortgage, and it'll be expected on you. And it's probably a very good idea even if you own property for those citizens who own property or in a floodway, looking at flood insurance. What the CRS program allows us to do is work through a rather complicated list of criteria, expectations, policies, things, a variety of different things. We get ranked on it, we get a score from it, and our quality of our score will give us an insurance reduction rate. So I think it's 5% per each level we reduce ourselves. There's 10 levels in total. We are currently sitting on level 5. I believe that gives us a 25% reduction on every citizen who has a flood insurance policy. One of the ways we interact with this policy is yearly update. So for us, this is going to be, it happened very recently where we had to send out a letter. This went out, it's about a month ago, in October. Sorry, this is small for you all, but if you lived in one of the higher flood prone residences listed within the FEMA's jurisdictional boundaries, you would receive this letter. And it outlines some, good strategies and explains kind of some of the programs. And it's more or less a way to incentivize the at-risk properties to join the program. So that's part of that. In a related note, and this is a wider approach that the city has been going through to increase and improve our flood defense, in a sense, we're working through our consultants, and we are gathering up information in order to conduct a process and a big document that we'll be submitting called an RLAA, a repetitive loss area analysis. It requires us to go out and make contact with each of the highest level loss properties that are in our jurisdiction, and to conduct outreach, a lot of efforts to improve the possibility of these properties being damaged. And what this will do is it will correct a mistake in how our hazard mitigation plan was conducted through the county. So essentially, we are trying to make sure that we maintain our CRS score as CRS score level 5. And this RLAA document will provide us that. We'll be working on it for about another year or so. It will take a lot of time. We have about 50 properties, I think, that are going to need very one-on-one direct communication. So we'll be conducting that RLAA through our consultants. And as a parallel to that, this document, in conjunction with our consultants, really comprehensive understanding of floodplain rules and regulations and CRS scoring, we believe you might be able to reduce our CRS level, which would give further discount to citizens who have floodplain insurance. So we're hoping we can hit both, but it is a very complicated process. There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of major milestones to reduce our score, but if we can make it happen via this document, we're going to. So that is the update, and I can answer any questions about CRS or you.
I believe that concludes our business. Lease license plate readers are still on for the